94 3 The Shark, Everything That Rocks. So we talked a bit about Haunted Long Island, and then I had the honor of getting a phone call because it's a small island from Kerri Ann Flannagan Broski. And she said, yes, I wrote those books. And I thought it's October. It's a great time to start talking about haunted places. Kerri Ann, good morning.
Good morning, Orlando. Thank you so much for having me on the Shark.
I'm excited to have you. You know, I noticed in your book as I flipped through it,
Right.
some of the more obvious places were omitted, and you chose some places that even I didn't hear of. And I'm curious, like, I'm sure it was on purpose to leave off the stuff everybody knows about, but what made you choose some of the more obscure places? And did you know they were obscure?
Okay, well, here's the thing. That's not the only ghost book I've written. I've actually written 9 books in total. My degree is actually in photography. And I went to Long Island University at CW Post, studied as a photojournalist, and I worked for Newsday as an intern and local papers. And I started writing a column about Huntington's history. And that led me to write 2 books in 1995 and 1997. And when you're researching older homes and things, there always seems to be a ghost story or two.
Sure.
So I was doing a lot of lecturing within the town of Huntington. And at one point, the Huntington Historical Society asked me to do a lecture around Halloween time. And I was on the board of trustees. I was first vice president for 6 years. And so I put a lecture together only with books, the stories that had some ghosts in it. And I'm telling you, our historic barn holds about 50 people. We had close to 80 to 100 people show up. I said, I can't believe all these people are interested in ghost stories. So people kept encouraging me, why don't you write a book just on ghosts? And I said, well, I wanted to be taken serious as a journalist and as a historian, because all of the places I was researching had historical backgrounds to them. And I wanted to educate the public the importance of preserving history. So I put it on the back burner. I didn't want to be considered as a ghostbuster, so to speak. But as time went on, we had different shows coming on the television. You weren't thought of as being crazy anymore if you believed in these things. And as luck would have it, in 2005, when I was giving yet another lecture during the Halloween season, in walked Joe Giaquinto, who happened to be a medium and a paranormal investigator. And I asked him right on the spot if he'd want to help work with me on doing a ghost book. And he agreed, and we started working together. So that was close to 19 years now. And so my original books were the Ghosts of Long Island books. So the first one had places like you're saying. It had the Amityville Horror, it had Satan's Trails, Mary's Grave, all of that, because I figured if someone's coming from California, they're going to wonder why these places aren't in here. But over the years, what I've tried to do is undo what Hollywood does, what Hollywood's perceptions of ghosts are, and also what people think are haunted places on Long Island. Because Long Island is really more than the Amityville Horror. It's very rich in history, especially our Native American past, the Revolutionary War, and beyond. So the books have evolved. So I actually wrote Ghosts of Long Island, Stories of the Paranormal, and then there was a sequel to that. Those are available only in e-format now because they came out so long ago. But I have another book, Haunted Long Island Mysteries is my latest one. So that's the one I'm on book tour right now. But Historic Haunts of Long Island is available. And that's actually a combination of 10 stories from Ghost 1, 10 from Ghost 2, and 10 brand new ones. I've also written a historic crime book. I've written one novel called The Metal, which is many paranormal experiences that I've had. I've had a lot of religious experiences. So that novel is based on my experience with Padre Pio, the saint who bore the stigmata. So overall, the books have really evolved into something that's very spiritual. There are some personal stories in these books, but over time, with the amount of research and people I know from doing events, people would say, oh, do you know this place is haunted? Did you know that place was haunted? So that's how it sort of came to be. At this point, I would say Joe and I have probably investigated well over 100 places that are presumably haunted on Long Island. We stay away from anything that's negative or demonic in nature. We concentrate on the positive aspects of spiritual communication. And when I lecture, I teach the difference between ghosts and spirits, 10 types of ghosts. And there's a lot of history on Long Island, a lot of ghost stories.
We're talking to Kerri Ann Flannagan Broski on 94.3 The Shark, Everything That Rocks. Kerri Ann, you mentioned lecturing in Huntington. Now, I believe that Nathan Hale was hanged in Manhattan, but wasn't he caught in Huntington? And you mentioned mediums. Does he ever show up in Huntington, or is that more of a city thing since that's where he was?
Well, he hasn't really shown up. I've had other people show up, but I haven't had him. But yes, he does have a lot of links to Huntington, Nathan Hale. Primarily what our concentration has been with these books, in all of the books, there has been stories about the culprit spiring. So we spent a lot of time out in Setauket and Strong's Neck, and Haunted Long Island Mysteries, where we were in the Brewster House. And it was amazing because there's different things that we do. We do recordings, and we're looking for EVPs, which are electronic voice phenomenon, and ghost box recordings, which are live time back and forth with the spirits. And then because I'm a professional photographer, I use my cameras to try to capture orbs. So as far as, like you were saying, with Revolutionary War contacts, in the Brewster House, we went upstairs to the third floor. It's a very small house. It goes back to the 1600s. And I was taking photographs, and I knew that upstairs had housed a lot of people at one point. And so we stood there, we weren't getting anything. And then very calmly, I said, spirits, I know you're here, and this is for educational purposes. We'd like to show that you are still with us and can communicate with us. And if you could show us something, fine. If you can't, we understand, kind of thing. We could treat them very respectful. Next thing you know, Joe and I are both shooting with our cameras, and the entire room fills with orbs. For a matter of about 30 seconds, we were getting orb photo after orb. Now, orbs are considered to be spirits that are showing themselves. It doesn't mean that they haven't gone to heaven. Like for me, I was born and raised a Catholic. I'm a practicing Catholic. I believe in heaven. So, but it's a way for them to show themselves in these orbs, and each orb is different, like a person. So they could have rings around them, different colors. They could have faces in them. I captured one time the face of a dog in an orb. So we were able to get that. With the ghost box recording, we were actually able to, we believe, correspond with Caleb Brewster, who was one of the people who were very active during the time of the culprit spiring. And it's really fascinating. And with these books, we're not trying to prove or disprove anything. We're just trying to show what kind of things that we get during our investigations.
When we read any of these books like Haunted Long Island, and I find them all so fascinating, what do you expect the reader to get out of it? What would you hope the reader gets out of it?
That's a great question. I love when people ask that question. Because what we do is very different from what you see on TV. That's very important to me. It's not this frightening thing where we're running for our lives. So I want people not to be afraid. That's the first thing. It's not, we don't look and do things that they show on the TV and on movies. So to get back to the difference between ghosts and spirits, because this is something that I really want people to get out of the books. Ghosts tend to be place-centered, people that, for reasons unknown, don't want to move on to the other side. So a good example of that would be Annette Williamson, who haunts the Country House restaurant. And that's in Stony Brook. And she's someone that has not crossed for whatever reason. But spirits are very different. Spirits are our own band of people. They could be aunts, uncles, parents, whoever. And with them, they want to show that they're still with us on our journey. So that's a big part of the book. And from the original Ghosts of Long Island to what I've done now, our communication has been amazing with people from the other side. Yes, they are where they're supposed to be. You know, it used to be the old belief in the 1950s that if you saw an apparition, let's say, of your grandfather, or sensed him in the room, quick, get the priest, he didn't make it to heaven, we've got to get him over. That, you can forget about that. So because of technology and energy, they're able to communicate. So of course, if your grandfather was a good person in life, he's where he's going to be when he dies. So that's one of the number one things I want people to take away from that. Our loved ones are with us on our journey. They've just gone from this world to the next, and that communication is possible. The second thing that I really want to stress, and they sort of, you know, I can't say one is more important than the next, but because I am a historian, it's very important to me to teach local history. And what better way to teach local history than through a ghost story. And people are learning about what's on Long Island. And we have so much history and so many places to visit. A lot of the places in the book are open to the public. I created the book for an adult audience, but I've had parents coming up to me, with their teenagers saying, wow, my teenager's reading, they never read, and they're learning local history in the process, and they recognize some of these places. So I would say the two main things are teach local history and the understanding of life after death and how our relatives and friends who have passed on can communicate with us.
Kerri Ann, since you have written so many books now, is there a certain sequence? Would you recommend them in the order that they came out, or is there a different sequence of books that accompany others that you would recommend?
Right. That's a good question too. You could really pick up on any of them. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the Ghosts of Long Island books are available in e-format. If you want some of those original stories about Mary's grave and all that, that would be in those books. But as far as historic haunts of Long Island, that would be a great one to start with. And then you could always go to Haunted Long Island Mysteries, but it really doesn't matter. Historic Crimes of Long Island has no ghost stories, but that's a different, book of a different nature, also historical. But I do prefer I always go back to the ghost books. That's my favorite thing. But really, because each book has their own chapters, you could just pick them up and see what you like. If people look at the table of contents and see what stories they like and go from there.
Kerri Ann Flannagan Broski on 94.3 The Shark, Everything That Rocks. You're touring your latest book, but
Yes.
anybody can come and ask questions. And I'm sure a lot of the information that they get is from previous books. So where are you going to be? I know it's exclusive to Long Island. So where
Yes.
can we find more of you? So especially with busy season coming with Halloween,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
sure this is going to be a big time for you.
It is. I mean, even though my books technically have nothing to do with Halloween itself, I'm always on the ghost, on the ghost trail here with Halloween, and it goes with spooky season, which is fine. But I have 20 events scheduled throughout Long Island. And if you go to my website at kerriannflannaganbroski.com, if you can't remember how to spell that for anyone listening out there, you can just go on to ghostsoflongisland.com or just Google my name, and the website will come up with all sorts of events. I'm doing a lot of libraries, and Joe Giaquinto will be with me with the majority of them. I have some at historical societies. I'll be in Tiny Books in Sayville. I'll be at Theodore's Books in Oyster Bay. With that one, Joe and I are actually doing a walking tour. So if anyone's listening and want to attend that one, you have to call ahead of time, and since it's a small bookstore, but we're going to be taking a group to Raynham Hall in Oyster Bay, which is very haunted, and to the Earl Whiteman House, which is in the latest book. And those are both Revolutionary War, houses. And then Joe's going to be playing EVPs when we get back to the bookstore. I'm also going to be at Borders in Riverhead, a winery out in the North Fork. So really, whoever wants me, that's where we go. But if you catch me with Joe, with him, we do a PowerPoint presentation. And so we'll be showing photos from our investigations. The orb photos I told you of the Brewster House will be there. And we will be playing EVPs and ghost box recordings live for the audience. And what's interesting about the books also is I take the reader on the actual journey of what it's like for us to do these investigations. So even though it's a work of nonfiction, it reads more like fiction. And the transcripts from our EVPs are in the book. So if people can't make an event and they get the book, they could actually read the transcript and follow along and listen to it through Joe's website, which you can connect if you go onto my website. There's a big button that says listen to EVPs. So, but definitely come and check us out. We're very entertaining. We have a lot of fun. You don't have to be scared. You'll come out, you're not going to be frightened. You'll be like, oh, I have a better understanding of what ghosts are. You won't be scared anymore.
Well, Kerri Ann, obviously I want to check out the website, and there's a lot of information, but
Yes.
In 2023, everybody wants the social media handle. So how do we find out more about you through social media?
Yes. I'm on Facebook under Kerri Ann Flannagan Broski. Make sure it's the professional page. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as Kerri Ann Flannagan Broski. So I'm easy to find. The other thing on Instagram too, if you go on there and you see a lot of food images, I was a food writer for Edible Long Island for a while, for 5 years, while I was doing the ghost investigating. And cooking is my other love. I also co-authored an Italian cookbook with Mr. Sausage in Huntington. That was back in 2008. And I get jokes all the time. People say, is it a haunted cookbook? I said, no, it's not a haunted cookbook, but I do have a lot of haunted restaurants in my books. And in fact, when you and I had a phone conversation, you had told me that you had been to Farm Country Kitchen in Riverhead, which is known for its ghosts as well as its good food.
I was just there. I found the book in my house. Didn't even know I owned it. I turned a page in the middle, and there it was, Farm Country Kitchen. But I was born in Blue Point. I grew up in Ronkonkoma, so these haunted stories have been part of my legend, my history. Even when my parents lived in Shirley for a short time, the house across the street was known to be built on an ancient burial ground. So I find this fascinating, and I want to ask. Obviously, there's misconceptions about ghost writing and ghost hunting, even the word. What do you hope your books shed light on more than anything, as far as those who still have fear about the word ghost?
Yes, a lot of people do. And in fact, a question that people ask me sometimes at my events is, how do I meld being a Catholic with what I do with the ghost investigating? Because again, with what Hollywood puts out, everything is evil and demonic. And it's just, if someone calls me and says, oh, there's a house where, 15 people were mutilated and devil worshippers, I'm like, well, no, we're not going to go there. I don't want nothing to do with that. I'm very firm in my faith and in my belief in Jesus Christ. So what we do, we make sure that everything is safe. That's the first thing. And just when people see us and listen to our lectures, they realize that dying is a normal part of death. I mean, a normal part of life. We live and then we die and we go on another journey. But everyone who is with us stays with us on this journey and just waits for us until we get to the other side. So it shouldn't be something that's frightening. People don't really know enough about death. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about what happens afterwards. And I think when people read my books and when they attend these lectures, they come out with a new perspective of things. I had a couple of years ago at the end of a lecture, everyone left, I was cleaning up and a man came up to me and he said, I'm an atheist. And I said, okay, I wasn't going to judge him or anything like that. But he said, after listening to you, he said, I really think I'm going to start changing my views. And that made me feel really good. There's a lot of people that are struggling with grief. My book, The Metal, covers a lot of that from a spiritual point of view and a religious point of view. But the ghost books as well. I had a woman come up to me in church one time thanking me for writing the ghost books because it gave her a new perspective of life after death. And so that's really important to me, to really help people overcome their fear of ghosts, overcome their fear of death. Sometimes people will call me and say, let's say someone lost their mother, and it's 6 months later. This is actually true. A woman came up to me and said, I sensed my mother and I turned around and I saw a bit of a vision and I was scared out of my mind. I was not, ready to handle this. And I said, that's fine. And she says, well, what do I do? You talk to them. I know it sounds crazy because you feel like you're talking to a wall, but they can hear you. So if you say, Mom, I really appreciate that you let me know that you're here, but I can't handle this. So please don't come in this way anymore. And most of the time they'll go. With the historical figures, it's different. I mean, obviously they're not coming to various people, but I had another woman, it was an older Victorian house and they had a ghost in the house and they moved eventually. And she called me up. She said, we got so attached to the ghost. Can the ghost come with us? I said, well, that's not up to me. But when her kids were little, because it was a woman, a female who had been a mother, and she actually soothed soothe the children, like help them to sleep and that kind of thing. So it's really not what people think it is. That I say, stop watching TV, come and see me and Joe and read my books.
Kerri Ann, listen, I'm going to say goodbye, but I want you to hang on because I want to talk to you
Okay.
off mic. But again, as far as the website, how do people find it?
So it's Kerri Ann Flannagan Broski.com or ghostsoflongisland.com. And you'll see the list of events. You can sign up for my newsletter. I also sell personalized and signed copies of my book on the website. So if people can't make an event and they want a personalized signed copy, I offer free shipping and I can get it right out to you in time for Halloween.
Kerri Ann, thank you. I'm going to talk to you off mic, but thank
Okay.
you so much for
Thank
joining us.
you. Thanks so much, Orlando. Take